Hello and welcome back to the Manufacturing Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Mayer. Before we jump into the heart of today's exciting episode, let's not forget to swing by manufacturingculturepodcast.com for more amazing content. We're also hanging out on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, so come join the conversation. Now, let's get into the groove with this month's thrilling theme, hardware that drives cultural change. And who better to walk us through this transformative landscape than Keith Pfeiffer, president at Aerobotics, the wizards of robotic solutions in aerospace and defense. Situated in the heart of Alabama, Aerobotics is revolutionizing how we think about manufacturing and culture. They're not just creating robots, they're crafting cultural change, one automated solution at a time. With over 100 robotic systems playing a crucial role in industries both in the US and overseas, they're setting a new standard for innovation and excellence. Keith is at the forefront of this exciting journey, blending high-value, high-precision components with the magic of robots. Under his guidance, Aerobotics is not just building hardware, they're shaping a new culture in the manufacturing world, where precision and automation open doors to uncharted territories of efficiency and creativity. So, dear listeners, strap yourselves in. We're about to explore how Keith and his team at Aerobotics are leading the charge in using hardware to drive cultural change, making the impossible not just possible, but the new normal. Let's welcome Keith to the show and dive into a fascinating world where hardware, manufacturing, and culture collide. Keith, it's awesome to have you here. Thank you very much for joining us on the podcast today, video, whatever we want to call it. I don't even know. Thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
I am good. Thank you for the introduction. Good to meet you. It's a heck of a resume you just read off. And sometimes just looking back, it's unbelievable. So thanks for having me.
Well, yeah, you're very welcome. And that resume we need to hear more about, right? That I think was just the tip of the iceberg. Keith, tell us, tell me, tell our listeners, how did you get to this point where you're now leading Aerobotics as president?
Yeah, so actually, I was born and raised in Indiana, basically in the middle of a cornfield. Really didn't really understand or know what was out there as it related to aerospace and defense. Most stuff in Indiana is related to agriculture. Actually, I had the privilege to grow up, two great parents, hardworking parents, lived about 20 minutes away from Purdue University, great engineering school. So was able to attended there, started out in industrial management, thought I was going to be working at, John Deere, Caterpillar, somebody like that, big manufacturing centers. And because that's what the Midwest has, automotive maybe in Detroit, but ended up graduating in December of 2000, shortly after September 11th. Which was life-changing for a number of ways. One, the industry, there was a lot of unknown what was going to happen with wars or potential wars. The stock market crashed. Things happened, right? And just so happened, I was looking for a job, was thinking I was going to be in automotive of some sort or big industry, and ended up getting a call from a company down here. The engineering manager at this company had gone to Purdue, had connections still up there. So I came down, could not believe I was going to be could have a chance to work in aerospace, defense, military type applications. Took a job down here in Huntsville. Started that, and then to the time frame early in that year, I think our little automation company, which I came down working for a small automation company, loved it, loved the ownership that each employee had to take to make that successful. So did that. We got bought out by a very large conglomerate. Shortly thereafter, decided I did not want to work doing that. Moved back to a automotive type, general manufacturing type situation. Did that for a short time and realized, man, this isn't for me. I like the small business. I like that environment. And I was contacted by the founder of what became Aerobotics shortly thereafter and he basically just asked me if I wanted to come back as a controls engineer, which is what I left as. So I did. I jumped at the opportunity. There's some other stuff, personal related stuff that my wife and I just jumped at to come back to this area. Mm-hmm. So we did. Was controls engineer for a number of years, probably till 20. Okay. I was then offered the engineering management job, but did that for a few years. And then I was offered the ownership position, and that's where we're at today. So that's my journey. Started as a controls engineer and then moved up through some management levels to do this.
Wow. That's pretty neat, man. That's pretty neat. And I mean, for the most part, that's 20 plus years, I guess you've been in the industry overall, but most of that time's been with a version of Aerobotics or another, right? I mean, other than
Yeah.
your time in automotive?
Yeah, that's right. So the initial automation company was doing very similar stuff to what I'm doing now. I jumped out into general industry for a while, I did not want to work for the large conglomerate, and I was going to kind of pick my way and see.
Yeah.
And I just, maybe it was an itch I just needed to scratch to make sure that that wasn't the direction I was going or wanted to go.
Absolutely. You got to try new things just to figure out what you do and don't like in your career. I'm a big believer in that. Keith, I'm really curious about Aerobotics. So for those listeners who may not be familiar, give us a quick rundown about what Aerobotics is, what you guys do, what kind of projects you guys work on, how many employees you have, those kind of fun things.
Okay. So Aerobotics provides robotic automation solutions as a top level to our customer base. Customer base is military customers, defense manufacturers, or really any high value process. Customer that has a very high value process, we do a lot of that work. Most of our employees have security clearances. They can work on special programs. We do have international experience so we export some large systems. But when we initially started, we were mostly a coating application company where we applied exotic coatings, stealth coatings, stuff like that, or primers, top coats at very high precision rates. Over the years, we've expanded our core competencies to do more with coatings, to do abrasion, to do measurement, and just try to expand on the coating process and improve that for our customers. It's an extremely difficult process at times. These coatings are meant to stick to things. They're meant to be difficult to abrade, all sorts of stuff. So it's a very high value adder though for our customer if these coatings are doing what they're supposed to. So we've stuck around that for years. We're now getting into mobile bases where our customers are asking more for a more flexible manufacturing solution, where they don't want to put in a large robot system. They want something they can move from building to building or site to site. Or put it on maybe an aircraft carrier or, something just crazy where they got to do, something out in the middle of the ocean or something on foreign soil. So, we are seeing more of that, but mostly focused on high value. We don't really deal with widgets that have a very low margin. We're dealing with high value articles, aircraft, missiles, other defense components, space equipment, stuff like that.
How many employees did you say you have?
We're currently about 64. We started out with 7 individuals.
Wow.
Really tried to make it grow organically. We're not trying to do forced growth, which I think can really hurt your product and your customers. So over the years, since we've been in business, we've tried to maintain an organic growth, make sure the market can sustain us and that we're providing value. So 65, I think by the end of the year, we'll be 70, 75.
That's awesome. Congratulations. That's a pretty neat growth trajectory there. And it sounds like you're only growing. Tell us a little bit about the culture internally there at Aerobotics before we get into how you guys can help solve cultural issues. Talk to us about the culture internally. Where was it when you started, and where do you think you've gotten it to now as president?
Yeah. So, when you start a company, you're a very tight-knit group in that it just feels like it's you against the world. I wasn't in ownership at that time, but you definitely feel that, if you've done any research as an individual, that a lot of companies don't make it. And, 3 years, 5 years are big milestones for a company. So that entire time when you're starting, your culture has to be whatever it takes, get it done. There's 7 individuals. There's nobody else to do the job. It's you or it fails. You're either successful or you fail. And, you look at company cultures, that's something, we try and replicate as we've grown is like, hey, you own this solution or you own this product, and each individual, it's on you. There's not a lot of people to come and get it out of the ditch later if something goes bad, or you know what I mean? So, that I would say ownership and self-motivation are 2 characteristics that, you start with as a culture at 7 people. And when you get to 70 people, you still need those same characteristics. You still need those individuals. And, it's one of those things is that, as you grow, you read about companies that aren't able to transition from a small company to a medium-sized company to a large company. And you always wonder as leaders, are we Are we carrying the right characteristics? Are we teaching the right things? And that's kind of where we're at. We're a small to medium sized company now, but still trying to teach, hey, everybody's got to own their portion of this thing we're carrying and go from there.
Yeah, I like that. I really think that, a lot of the drivers of at least desired culture come down from leadership, right? They come from leadership defining the values of the organization and then living those values, because once the employees see that, they're going to do the same, right? Is that kind of been your experience there?
Yeah, I think so. I harp pretty hard on our leadership team of, man, we got to make disciples. We've got to have people that not only compliment us, but doing things that we don't do well, and bring in our reach. So I do. A lot of times I think our guys, especially we hire a lot of entry level individuals that maybe haven't been in industry yet, don't know what to expect. And a lot of them are really shocked initially on how much of this company they own on a day-to-day level, what it takes to do this. They're making large purchases on equipment. They're doing major design efforts. They're going out on the road. They're installing this equipment. They're the face of the company to the customer. Our people make this company. We're basically a service provider. We provide a solution. If they do their job well, they're selling the next system for us.
Yeah.
And always seems like that.
Yeah, I love it. And something you alluded to in there really struck a chord with me. Something about hiring smarter people, right? To me, that's always been the backbone of leadership, is know where your limitations are as a leader and then hire people smarter than you to fill the gaps, right? It sounds like that's where you're at.
Yeah, our founder, that was one thing he said to me years ago: always hire somebody smarter than you. And you just got to be confident in your own ability to let them go and let them drive. I have a quote on my desktop from Theodore Roosevelt, hire the right people and then don't meddle in their stuff, give them the rope to go.
Yeah.
And that's what I try and do. Now, that can be a little bit shocking to some people. You're like, you don't want to see this? Like, no, I trust you. You got to go. We don't have time to sit there and question, paralysis by analysis. Do the work, be confident, and we're gonna go with wherever the chips fall. We're gonna back each other up, and we're gonna go.
Yeah, that's awesome. How much do you think your internal culture is shaped by the industry that you serve, right? You're serving aerospace and defense, which in itself has a unique culture compared to automotive or medical device or, textile manufacturing, right? So how much do you think the customer base that you serve also helps shape the culture there internally?
Oh, yeah. I think it does a ton for a couple of reasons. One, in defense and military applications that we're working in, you get a lot of retired vets and people that have been in the military. They understand discipline. They understand that stuff has to work because they've been on the other end of it. You also get another side of it with the aerospace side, that stuff has to be right, and it has to be, you don't get a second chance sometimes. When an aircraft has an issue, it's not pull over, it's how do I land this? Right. It's much different, right?
Yeah.
So
And I don't mean to laugh, for those of you watching me. I didn't mean to laugh at what Keith was saying. It was just a shocking statement. You don't just pull over. So I wasn't laughing at airline issues. We just saw a plane recently, in the last couple of months, lose the airframe or part of the emergency window, the Delta flight, whatever that was, leaving, I think it was Spokane. Anyway, continue. Go ahead.
I think the attention to detail we have to have as engineers installing systems is much greater than some of the attention to detail you have to have on an automotive line. Years ago, when we were first starting out at Aerobotics, we were taking any work we could and, just trying to survive. I was doing some work in Southern Alabama at a facility. It was an automotive facility. And they were making changes to the robot programs in real time. So the robot would get changed. The conveyor line was never stopping. But if you had a problem on what you were programming, you could hit the part. They were doing it all the time. It felt like they were just starting up this line and they kept hitting these parts. And these parts were plastic covers for an automotive solution or something. No big deal. In aerospace, you can't just hit the part. You don't get a chance to hit the F-18 or some other asset or the very high value. So you have to be right. You have to be right the first time. So the attention to detail is mandatory for this job. You can't take anything for granted.
Yeah, I get that. So working in robotics, how do you think working with such advanced technology influences your internal culture there. Do you think that, I mean, because robotics have been around for a while, AI has been around for a while. It's new to some people, and the last couple of years have, people have started going nuts over Chat GPT and generative AI, but it's been in our industry for a while. It's been in law. It's been in other fields for quite some time. I mean, I carry an iPhone. That's AI, right? It's been around. It may not have the generative aspects that we're seeing now, but how does working on such cool technology, cool projects in the defense, does that help shape your culture internally as well?
Yeah, for sure. You can't ever, in our business, in what we do, you can't ever think that what you did last time is going to be acceptable this time, in that technology is changing so much. The advancement of hardware, of software is happening so quickly. You have to stay current. You don't, for us, our engineering team, what you did 5 years ago, 3 years ago, sometimes even a year ago, just don't matter. You got to be constantly looking for the latest sensors. You got to be checking data sheets. You got to understand tolerance and precision and repeatability and all these high value assets that are, a lot of stuff is getting tighter. We're seeing, hypersonic missiles now in the industry, and, you don't go Mach 5 or plus without a very well-built part and well-defined manufacturing processes. So you look at technology as a whole and what our engineers have to stay ahead of and understand and be part of. It's crazy.
Yeah. No, I get that. You've got, I think I read robotic systems out there.
Yeah, that's probably pretty accurate, somewhere around there.
That's pretty amazing. That's a fairly mind-blowing number. How do you think automation innovation is impacting the culture within the manufacturing industry as a whole right now?
Well, I think it comes down to quality of life for robots in general. There's always the narrative that it's taking jobs, but that narrative, and from my standpoint, most people in automation that's crazy. It's not taking jobs. It's improving lives. It's improving products. We have a number of applications where a robot is inside of maybe let's say a 14-foot tube of some sort that's maybe only 30, 40 inches in diameter. No one wants to be inside of there painting or sanding, laying on their back, scraping material out. None of that. It's just not a good environment. So we have systems out there that are doing that work, and that same person is sitting at a computer watching the machine work, making sure everything's doing what it's supposed to. They're doing daily service on that machine. They're tracking the process data, making sure everything's staying in spec. But that's a much better life for that individual than, having shoulder surgery at 45 or something like that. And on top of that, you get a more uniform process or product. In our case, when we're painting, the robot doesn't stop and take a break. When you tell it to go 200 millimeters a second, it's going to move 200 millimeters a second. A person sitting there painting by hand is not going to maintain 200 millimeters a second, pass after pass. So, we've had this conversation with customers in the past where, you bring in a robot and, a painter will come in and say, I can do better than that. And okay, let's, try and make light of it. And let's do it then. You over there, I'll put the robot over here and we'll do this. And we have done that. And those same people tend to become our biggest fans when we do that.
I can only imagine. Do you have any of those videos that you can share with me, and I'll add them to the, okay.
The one I'm thinking of was actually done in a closed facility, but I was a young engineer and he started talking and then I started talking and well, let's just do it. We ended up doing it.
That's a hold my beer moment, Keith. That's a pretty neat moment. It's like, hold my beer. Let me set up this robot. It's going to paint against a human. That's awesome.
Come on.
So there's a very real, in my experience, and you're the expert in this field, so you may have a different take on it. But in my experience, there's a real paradox between culture and automation, right? There's actually studies out there called the automation cultural paradox, where it states that the majority of manufacturing facilities aren't culturally ready to embrace automation to make their culture ultimately better in the long run. Is that something that you're finding out there?
Yeah, It's kind of funny because you get both sides of it when you go do an install a lot of times, right? We almost always find somebody inside a customer that is like just dying for this. Like, hey, I'm all in. I want to learn everything I can. And so you get a little bit of the divide inside of the companies. And, for us, what I tell my guys is, hey, when you find that guy that's going to be the person, you get their number, you make sure they have yours, and they become basically a sponsor for us and our system. And they don't want to see it fail. We don't want to see anything fail. So yeah, we see the divide. Sometimes people are like, oh, it'll be divided between youth and maybe somebody, the older generation. That's not necessarily the case. We see people that are 5-10 years away from retirement, like, man, I wish we would have had this 25 years ago. And, stuff like that. And then you get the younger generation sometimes too that just wants to do what they're doing and not change or not learn. So you can't say it's an age thing. Some people just like the challenge to try it, and some people don't.
Yeah. Okay. Do you see manufacturing changing or evolving to be more welcoming to automated solutions?
Yeah. I think at this point we're getting to a point where there's so much automation in factories doing basic tasks that it's more accepting when you start coming in and start taking more tasks that maybe have been historically human driven tasks, but technology is moving. The robot AI and some machine learning stuff is taking some of those decisions and stuff that humans have been doing, that they're becoming more automated. So we are seeing that. I think a lot of people, they've been around it enough now that we don't have the same fights that we did. People aren't, knock on wood, but people aren't cutting robot cables when we do our installs anymore and stuff like that.
Hold on, I'm going to stop you there. People were cutting the cables of robots?
Yeah. So, as an integrator, every once in a while, you go to do an install, you would leave at night and come back in the morning and stuff would be missing, stuff would be broken, cables would be cut in the worst cases. Oh, yeah. We've seen it, but, we don't see it. It's not like that, really. I haven't seen that for years. But initially when I was starting out, yeah, that was always a concern.
And is that just people afraid of losing their jobs?
Yeah. I mean, they believe the narrative that, we were coming, take everything. And it's just not it's not what happened, and it's just was never true.
Right. I mean, to me, automation is, and again, I've been in the industry 20 years. I'm not as familiar with automation as you are, but it's always, to me, been an opportunity for employers to then provide a better career path for their employees. I mean, you can take a CNC operator and train them to program robots, right? I mean, that's a much higher skill set, much different outlook for that employee's life if you're able to upskill them into that different role, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you could train them to program, you could train them just to do maintenance on them, which is, a much easier task than constantly doing what the robot's doing. We found a number of, there's just so many job opportunities outside of doing the task that, support our automation that we're bringing in. Yeah, the narrative there, I think, has pretty much been killed, but, every once in a while we still get to it.
Good. So, Keith, what's your vision for the future of manufacturing? Where do we go from where we are now? I mean, we are starting to embrace a lot more of this technology, this automation, AI, things of that nature. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, for us, it's going to be driving down cost of automation. Is one of the things I think that the next few years in AI and machine learning is really going to do. I think flexibility in automation is a huge thing going forward. It's there now, but I think it's going to be bigger to quickly be able to take an automated solution that was put in place to quickly adapt it to a new product, a new model, a totally different asset. And I think some of the machine learning, some of the intelligence there is going to help with that, automatically generating pathing for AGVs, for robots, all that stuff is coming.
Awesome.
And then to continue to take the high value, human intensive jobs and automate those, and to where the machine is doing the work, even on those high value, what are currently human intensive jobs, and hopefully increasing production, increasing quality, and driving down cost.
Yeah, got it. Second to last question. For anybody who's looking to change their culture, who is an owner, leader within a manufacturing facility, what advice would you give them, whether it's leveraging technology to foster that better culture or tips that you've learned along your leadership journey? What advice would you give them?
Man, that's a tough question. A lot of ways to go with that. You got to lead by example. You got to be willing to get in the trenches. You got to be pliable in that you're principled yet pliable, would be the way I would say it. We're not sacrificing quality. We're not sacrificing, whatever that you hold near and dear, but, and we're just going to do whatever it takes. And as a leader, you got to do that. You got to show that. And then, if as a leader, servant leadership is huge. In my opinion, can't sit up here in the office all the time. You need to get out there, whether it's pushing a broom on a Friday afternoon for us, or, just making sure everybody understands what you value, what the company values, what the customer values. Value focused is a monstrosity from what I'm seeing now, is just make sure everybody understands what adds value and focus on those tasks.
Yeah, I like it. Keith, last question. What haven't I asked you that you want to share with the audience today?
Let me go back to something you started with. We started talking about what I came into the industry with and my background and this and that. I tell everybody, especially those coming out of school, because we do hire a lot of entry-level people. School's not going to teach you how to do this job. It might teach you how to think. Hopefully it teaches you how to think, how to react, how to have second options and do this. If this doesn't work, then I'm going here, here, and here. It needs to teach you how to think, but you're not going to start this knowing what you're doing just because you went to school, and vice versa. Some of my technicians that I have in the shop are extremely, extremely intelligent, know what they're doing, can go to a customer site. They're young and they're pointing out utilities. They're pointing out all this other stuff that has to happen, and they've learned it on the job. You're going to learn a lot on the job. You don't need to have the perfect background or the perfect education to do well. You got to work, and that's it.
Yeah. I love that. That could be the quote of the episode there, Keith. I'll remember that one. Well, thank you very much, sir, for being on today. It was a pleasure to meet you. This was our first time talking, so what a great first conversation. I hope we get to have another one in the future. Everybody, that's a wrap on another fantastic episode of the Manufacturing Culture Podcast. A huge thank you to Keith Pfeiffer for joining us today and giving us an insider's look at the incredible world of aerobotics. His insights on how robotics and automation are revolutionizing the manufacturing industry and driving cultural change were absolutely inspiring. I loved hearing his vision for the future. Remember, you can always relive the magic of today's episode and catch up on our past discussions at Manufacturing Culture Podcast. It's your go-to spot for all things culture and manufacturing. We can't sign off without a massive shout out to our sponsor, Spironi. Their support makes conversations like these possible, and we're incredibly grateful for their commitment to the manufacturing community. If you enjoyed today's episode, do us a favor, share it with your friends, colleagues, anyone who's passionate about the future of manufacturing. And while you're at it, drop us a rating and a review on whatever platform you listen to your podcasts on. Your feedback not only helps us grow and bring more of the content that you love, but it also makes us more visible, rockets us up the charts. So when people search for things like manufacturing, we're there at the top. Stay tuned for more exciting episodes where we dive deep into the heart of manufacturing and culture. Until next time, keep innovating, keep inspiring, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in the world of manufacturing. Thanks for listening. Have a great day and keep making things. Come on, platform.